business, the reality is that it is transactional. And if you have nothing to bring to the table, why do people want to talk to you? And the only way you develop a skill is just by doing. And the thing is, I think a lot of people will sit there all day and try to plan things and figure out what path is best, what opportunity is best. But I mean, there's always different opportunities going on. And the reason why we have what we have is because we picked one thing, stuck to it, and developed our personal skills that contributed towards the business along the way. And it's really that simple.
Presented by Zapier, the AI automation company.
Hello and welcome to the Small Team, Big Scale podcast, the show where we talk about how tiny teams with big ambitions are doing more with less, scaling smarter, not harder, and building big businesses with teams that could fit around a dinner table. I'm your host, Ron Schmelzer, and on today's episode, we're talking with Kirk McKinney and Jacob McKinney, who are the co-founders of Junk Teens. Hi, Kirk and Jacob. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Well, we usually spend a lot of time on the formerly known as Exponential Scale podcast, usually talking about AI companies, because it's so easy to start a 1 or 2 person company and do like $100 million in like 6 months. The stories are getting crazy out there. But there's so many aspects of the economy that are also scaling quite big now because people have so much power at their disposal to build companies in ways that they weren't able to before. So let's talk a little bit about that story here. We're going to talk about what happens when 2 teenagers look at a pickup truck and see a business. Most people think scaling requires a product roadmap, a tech stack, raising Series A funding. But these 2 looked at junk removal and thought, we can do this better, and we can hire our friends to help. No venture capital, no enterprise sales team, no fancy office, just 2 brothers, 1 truck, and the audacity to believe that a high school side hustle could become a 7-figure company. You heard that? That's right. Generating $3 million a year at the latest numbers, with about 35 people in the field, 20 or so sort of core in the company itself, but just 2 people, a team manager and their mom, helping with the actual core of the business, and bootstrapped the whole way. And I think that's why I'm most interested in this. This is what makes this really interesting, because they didn't really just focus on building a revenue machine. They're building a system where the team is local teens who gain real work experience, confidence, and skills, as well as those that are in college as well. And every item that they divert from a landfill is revenue that also happens sustainable. And that's leverage at every level: revenue, community, and environmental impact, all from a business that most people would never think could scale. So that's exactly why today's guests are so perfect for this conversation. So as mentioned, my guests are Kirk McKinney and Jacob McKinney, the 2 co-founders of Junk Teens. And for those of you that don't know, Junk Teens is a junk removal company based in Westwood, Massachusetts, that started with a single pickup truck and grew into a 7-figure business while the founders were still in high school. And, well, that's all I got to say on the subject, so I'm going to get right into it. So, Jacob and Kirk, welcome again, and maybe start. Jacob, introduce yourself a little bit, and hand it off to Kirk, and let's sort of get the story going.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. It's good to be on here, and great to meet you as well, Ron. My name's Jacob McKinney. I'm 20 years old. I'm currently going into my junior year of college, and when we started the business, I was 15 years old, a freshman in high school.
Fantastic. Yes, Kirk.
Yeah, my name's Kirk McKinney. I just graduated from Babson College, and I currently live in my own house. And yeah, we started also when I was in high school. And even before we started Junk Teens, I was always, I started working a job at the grocery store. But then from there, I discovered the dump, and I used to resell some of the junk that I would find there as a side hustle. That's how we ultimately ended up on this path of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's actually a good place to start. So, most people, we see like junk businesses around, or people like the hauling things, or college hunks, junk trunk. I don't know exactly that whole story, but that was something that you looked at and you saw an opportunity. So maybe it's a little bit about that. Walk us through that first day. What made you think that junk removal or a disposal was the play, and how did you get those first few jobs to get this ball rolling?
Yeah, so I was always in a mindset that I would be able to fund my life and my dreams through working at a job, being paid hourly, and because that's how I grew up understanding how I would be able to get ahead. But my curiosity actually led me to the dump. one day when I was riding bikes with my friend, and then I saw that people threw away some really valuable speakers, and I didn't think too much of it. Like, I wasn't thinking of selling them or anything, but I brought them home. They worked, and eventually, after a series of things happening, I ended up just selling them on Facebook Marketplace. But that was kind of the first moment that I was introduced to entrepreneurship, working for myself, doing something I love, and making more money than working at a job. And pretty much that moment led towards us discovering the opportunity of junk removal about a year later from being at the dump. And that's the moment when I teamed up with my brother, Jacob, and we bought a pickup truck together for $4,000, and we started providing the junk removal service to people. And that was in 2021 when we started.
Well, that sounds good. Well, maybe talk to us a little about the economics of how that works, because I'm not familiar necessarily of like the how the revenue comes in, your costs, and just in general how much margin there is in a business like that.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we have our vehicles, started with a pickup truck, but now we have 8 dump trucks. And whatever vehicle you're using, basically the customer pays us to remove their unwanted items, and then we bring them to the dump and we pay the dump fees to get rid of them. And then obviously the scale of the business affects what the costs are for us to provide the service. In the very beginning, it was just my brother and I, pickup truck, insurance, dump fees, not any crazy expenses. But now that we have 8 dump trucks and a full-time team of over 20 people, we do have a lot of different types of insurance. We have payroll, we have gas. Like there are so many different expenses on a day-to-day now that go into it, the rent. I could go off the whole list, but the thing is, it's really like with any business as you scale, there's obviously the different expenses, but that's the core foundation of what junk removal is. The customer hires us to remove their unwanted items, and then we pay to dump it, and that's pretty much how it all works.
Hmm. So, maybe Jacob could get into this as well a little bit. As just thinking about, how are you seeing this grow? Like, how big do you think this can get? And maybe is there something different now about growing this type of business than perhaps might have been the case, say, a decade or two ago?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the industry has actually been around for quite some time now to the point where I think scaling is pretty consistent in the way that it works, from now until how it was before, with obviously the major difference being these different AI tools and stuff like that that you can implement to kind of just like provide shortcuts. But at the same time, that trajectory and the path is very similar to, in my opinion, how it's been even 20 years ago, just because the industry is so historic. It's been around for so long. It's not really something where we find ourselves reinventing the wheel much. It's more just, what is already working, who can we talk to that will share some insight, who can we learn from, and then now, how can we go and act and implement that into the business. And again, AI is great because it can kind of speed up that whole process. But, where do we see the business growing? Right now, like Kirk said, we have that 8 trucks, a bunch of different employees, and we pretty much occupy the main territory of like Massachusetts with like a little bit of Rhode Island as well. And within the next couple of years, we'll understand more like kind of what our model of scale is. We're kind of doing some research, just kind of understanding what we want that to be right now, whether it's going to be like a franchise, private, like scale kind of private models, whatever, or even some licensing. But we're just kind of understanding that path right now and kind of building the backbone to it. And so when that time comes, we'll have like every system dialed in, every person knows what to do. Just the team will be, super efficient to the point where we can execute on that model. But that's kind of just something playing in the background right now, for us to eventually sort out. Kirk, maybe you can add on that too.
We're definitely at that point right now since I just graduated college where we are really thinking of scaling big. One of the biggest things to our advantage right now is technology and AI, and we're using it every day in the back end operations of Junk Teens, which is part of our plan to scale because now more than ever in history, we have the ability to use technology to build systems to scale this model across the nation. And even 5 years ago, what we're capable of doing now with system building, it wasn't really available to the same speed, scale, and quality. And I don't think any junk removal company has ever had the ability to build systems the way that we do for the affordability that we do at any point in history. You would have had to hire a developer to create an app before, but we have our own app internally for junk teams that we use for our day-to-day operations. And that's all a part of our plan to scale junk teams. And quietly in the background, throughout the last year, we've been building these systems. And it doesn't show up directly in our revenue numbers today. But if we had multiple locations across the nation, definitely would. And it's really the system building is one of the biggest things that we have to our advantage right now with technology.
Actually, that's a good place to start because we love technology, we love systems. So, can you talk a little bit about, maybe that giving away everything here in the podcast, but talk a little bit about those systems and maybe systems you picked as like the place to focus and how you're innovating there because that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean we're not holding back anything, so we'll share any information about what we're doing here. And in terms of the systems that we have on the back end, GoHighLevel is really good for organizing customer information, tracking our leads, and organizing all of our communication on the back end. For our day-to-day software, we currently use Jobber, but I wouldn't be surprised in a year from now if we could just literally duplicate that software and make it even better and then have it internal. So, I mean, like that's where we are now. And then we did also develop our own app as well that we use um for more internal things. We have a leaderboard for the day-to-day sales in the company, so everybody can kind of see who's performing the best, who's doing the most jobs. You can see who's in each truck and then contact them directly from the app. So everyone's contact is in there. And then even for Google reviews and anything that we try to track internally for our growth, it's all there. And yeah, Jake, is there anything I'm missing here in terms of those back-end systems?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to go more in depth about like tracking things, like that's one of the things that'll kind of make or break a company, I feel like. And especially with how much stuff goes on with like a blue collar business like this. You have tons of different people calling different people every day, messing things up, fixing things, whatever. Like there's just a jumble of things going on all the time. And if it's not organized, it can become like a just a big mess. And so we have like probably, 20 or 30 different phone numbers that track all sorts of different leads in terms of like where people are finding us from. And then that again, like that all funnels in through GoHighLevel, which we also have like a kind of like a back office. So, if we were going to go scale and open up new locations, we wouldn't necessarily have to hire like a new um like offices or like of course we'd have to hire new people, but we would just be adding those people onto the back office, which kind of manages all the locations opposed to like putting people in these specific, offices around the map here. So yeah, like that back office is definitely really strong in terms of just doing the day to day, handling all those phone calls. We're doing like upwards to like 40 or 50 jobs every single day. That's like hundreds of leads that these guys have to deal with every day. And sorting through that can be pretty messy. So having those softwares, having different automations that link between the softwares, we use like QuickBooks to handle our bookkeeping and everything like that as well. And yeah, another thing I think is really important is definitely your like training systems as well. And so we've been putting in a lot of work recently to get like different like training videos and almost like training modules for like different topics within the company. So let's say, I can see someone is struggling with like using certain tools. And, obviously people can always learn from, higher ups in the company, people that are better than them. But at the same time, it's very important that they have like other training just besides that, and especially stuff that's more structured. So being able to like watch a video about how to use the tool that you can like constantly play back multiple times instead of having to, pick on one of the managers to re-explain it multiple times. So different stuff like that, like just the training is definitely really important. And yeah, just like a big emphasis towards our people and the sales, I think are two of the biggest, you know, like they have different systems, that make up both of those things, but I think those are two really important parts of the company. Just because obviously the people are what is running everything, but then there's no company without the sales. And you'll kind of find like there's a million problems that go on all the time, different things you're thinking about wanting to solve or different things you want to fix, but you realize that most of those problems actually get solved just by fixing the people and the sales issue. So yeah, more sales and more people always seems to build the better systems and solve other problems within the business.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm loving this because I'm a systems guy, and I know that even though you're just a relatively small operation in terms of people, all the stuff you're dealing with is the exact same stuff that even billion-dollar companies do, right? It's like the only thing that's different is just the scale, right? They have the same needs for back office and automation, front office automation, even training, corporate training, all that sort of stuff is the same. And I think everybody who's listening to this, should really pay attention because even if you can be like, well, I'm just a one person operation, two person, I don't need to invest in any sort of back office or front office. The answer is, well, if you're planning on growing, you probably should. It's probably the best investment you can make because that's going to help you. Otherwise, you're just running around, with information stuck in your head and things on paper or documents, and no one can. You can't grow that way. So this is fantastic. I'm glad you're investing in yourself, and we're definitely hearing a lot of trend of people building their own apps. It's easier than ever now to build your own thing, scratch your own itch, as it were. So I think that's fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the sort of light bulb. We talked a little bit about the idea and where that came from and how that originated the business. But a lot of people will maybe do something as a side hustle and not decide to like go all in on it. So from your perspective, maybe Kirk or Jacob, how did you, at what point did you decide that this wasn't a side hustle? This was like, hey, I'm going to really focus on this, make this my business, make this my career. And then kind of what is that? How did that put college in context? Because I kind of have been there before, and you're like, what am I doing here? I'm running my own business. Why am I going to college? So, make a little bit about both of those sort of inflection points.
Yeah, that moment is definitely very clear. It was after our first year of running the business. We had made around $120,000 with just our pickup truck, doing a lot of different services, not just junk removal. And we realized that there was a big opportunity there. And that was the time when we decided to go all in, rebranded our business from K&J Removal and Disposal to Junk Teens, which was more scalable. And it was our second year. That was 2022. We reinvested everything into a dump truck, named the company Junk Teens, and stuck with only junk removal. That's the moment when we realized that it was no longer a side hustle and it was something serious. And then about doing this in college, it's always been a real challenge for us, even figuring out the why behind it all. But Babs in college to us has been great and transformed my life, and I think Jake's as well, and he can speak on that. But it's more of the type of thing where right now, obviously we could go make millions more by not being in college, but in 10 years from now, what being in college will give us will have us steps ahead in the future. So it's more of a long-term play for us. And then also the specific values of Babson. It's a very international school, and the network there is really good. So at the time where we are nationwide, that's when the value of the school will really bring a lot more. So in a way, it's like we're taking a step back to take two steps forward by completing our college degrees. And it's not for the degree, it's not for what we learn in the classroom, it's for who we meet and who we know there. And yeah, that's really the main thing. And for me, like a main driver to complete the college degree was my parents, because it's something that they've always wanted from me. And I love and I respect my parents. So a big part of it is doing it for them, for me.
Fantastic. So let's talk about sort of the mission and focus. Junk Teens, obviously got it there in the name, teens. So, kind of what was the purpose or focus on sort of the teen community, and talk a little bit about the community impact side as well, and what it's like to recruit and manage a teen workforce.
Yeah, well, we started Junk Teens because people were hiring us because we were young. So I kind of just connected the two. Like, okay, we do junk removal and we're teenagers, so boom, it just made sense. And then like we were really just hiring our friends and we were all young. And then through growing Junk Teens, we realized like there's something special there. And then the mission kind of shifted from like just us being young and making money to then really like empowering the youth is something that would drive me further than just how much we can make. It's like being able to give jobs to high schoolers, um, through our social media, inspire thousands of teenagers to start businesses. And for me, that's really like the big driver now is being able to have a foundation that does that kind of impact. And I'd say that's where Young Teens is now.
Great. So, my next question has a little bit to do with people aren't necessarily thinking about businesses like yours in terms of when they're trying to start something new. A lot of people are, of course, enamored with the all the great stuff in tech. We love tech too, but this is obviously a huge growth potential. So maybe talk a little bit about what the industry is like. Talk about people who are thinking of starting something, maybe directly in your industry, but in similar ones. What should people be looking for in terms of an opportunity now? And just stick with that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have some sort of in. Like, it's very hard to break into an industry if you don't have any connections in it already. And, we grew up in like a blue collar household, just kind of like, our parents run a tree service, so they go and like trim and cut trees. And, you know, growing up, like we've been around that like blue collar industries, not even just junk removal, but just we understand how the service-based industry worked really well. And so it was almost like a common sense to us. Like we just knew, how the business should operate. We knew what it looked like. We've worked for many different kind of blue collar businesses, not like full time, but just like coming in for little days here and there to check out operations and stuff like that. And then, again, like our parents being in the industry know a lot of people in our area, different connections to get us kind of more set up with like tools or other stuff like that. A bit easier than if we were just going to go and try to like research everything on Google from scratch. And obviously there was so much stuff that we had to figure out ourselves, but like having some sort of in and connections, just like Kirk as well knew those people at the dump. He basically built the connection with people that worked at one of the disposal sites for 6 months to a year before we ended up having a junk removal business. So like these types of connections made things so much easier when we actually started the business. And so, yeah, I mean, having, people you already know in the industry or adjacent industries or just kind of, friends that will help you out. Again, like we knew some people that ran other junk removal companies that we could always call for little, tips and tricks of advice and stuff like that. So I'd say for me personally, that was definitely the biggest one. Um, and Kirk may have some too.
No, I think you just summarized it very well. That's what I was going to say.
Fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit about more about that advice and guidance, because that is one of the challenges. A lot of people, especially now, it's harder than ever to find people to give you good advice and to help you out and to build networks. There's certainly lots of influencers out there who are willing to sell you a course, but that's not going to help you build a network, and that's not going to certainly help you build relationships that are going to get you far, or even get good advice. And the thing about it is it's easy to get generic advice, but the stuff that you need, it needs to be specific, to your industry or your market or whatever it is. So how are you going about building your networks, building relationships, getting good quality advice?
Honestly, I would say it's about the skills that you have, because in business, the reality is that it is transactional. And if you have nothing to bring to the table, why do people want to talk to you? And the only way you develop a skill is just by doing. And the thing is, I think a lot of people will sit there all day and try to plan things and figure out what path is best, what opportunity is best. But I mean, there's always different opportunities going on. And the reason why we have what we have is because we picked one thing, stuck to it, and developed our personal skills that contributed towards the business along the way. And it's really that simple. And the the real the real advantage is just starting now. The best time is now. And whatever idea is in front of you, it's better to start something and learn months in that there's a better path than to just think for months and never do anything, never develop your skills. So in terms of networking, though, it's really just about doing and developing a skill that's valuable.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We believe in the JFDI, just freaking do it. It's sort of the best strategy. But I do want to dig a little bit into that because as you start to grow, you hit these areas where you may need a little bit of that advice and counseling. For example, you're talking about franchising is one of those areas that can get not necessarily just complicated, but there's a lot of things that people in the industry may know may not necessarily be so obvious when you're out there trying to do it. And so that's part of where I'm wondering is like, well, how are you working through that, and where are you getting the good advice so you don't get stuck and get burned with like bad franchises or an arrangement where you lose control and all of a sudden some crazy junk team franchise is starting to hire, I don't know, 82-year-old old ladies. It's not going to happen, but I'm just saying, that's the kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not entirely sure right now if franchising is going to be that path that we choose, but we have other friends in the industry that have an FTD and a franchise. We go and learn from them. There's a franchise department at our school that we've learned from. Today, we're able to learn from AI by asking questions. We can learn through that directly. In terms of directly the franchising knowledge, to answer that question.
I was gonna add on, like, it's honestly just as simple as asking. And like back in the day, when like we really didn't know anyone, I wasn't at Babson College yet, so my high school didn't really have a lot of business resources. Sure, we have our parents, but they don't run any massive franchise, and didn't really know anyone who did. So, like where was I gonna find information on how to, grow or scale the business? It was time to make some industry friends. And so, Kirk had the social media. He could always reach out to people through there and kind of, say like, hey, like, how's it going? Like, we're running this business over here. Like, how you guys doing? And just start up conversations like that. Sometimes I would even just go on Google and just like look for other junk removal companies like across the states. So it wouldn't be competition. And then I'd call them and I'd be like, hey, like, I'm a young kid. I'm trying to get things started. I just had a quick question for you. And then that quick question could turn into like an hour conversation with someone, just like, picking their brain and getting really good advice. And, if you can get on the phone with someone, I think you can always get on the phone with 1 to 2 more people from that person's circle. All you have to do is ask. And so again, like you're on the phone right now, we're on the podcast with you, Ron. Like, what if at the end we're like, hey, like, anyone else in the industry here who would want to get us on a pod? And I'm sure you know a few people. And whether you want to reveal the secret right away, like I'm sure if we really pushed, like you give us a name. So yeah, just like kind of asking once you're already on the phone is definitely a big one too.
Yeah. Well, in podcasting, it's like everybody's happy. I don't think nobody owns their own audience, so I think everybody's happy to share in our case. That's good it's good to hear. Just ask, and nothing can go wrong. Sounds like that's the right approach.
Mhm.
Well, it sounds good. I'm actually curious about the junk industry a bit to understand, demand and like is there always constant demand? Is there more demand than supply? So there's room for companies like yourselves. How does the economy sort of fit into any of this in terms of, you know, is it like, does junk removal work better and when the economy is doing better or not? But I'm not really sure how any of that works. So maybe have some insights into just in general how the industry works.
Yeah, I can speak on that real quick. I would say that the demand is growing for the service. Of course, there's just more people in America, more and more and more. It's very much like a North American industry. You don't see this business in Europe or Asia. But the supply is absolutely like overloaded. And so what I've seen is like when a really big franchise emerges or grows, you hear it from all the small guys that like they're getting tapped out, they're failing, they're losing. And then, when there's a wave of these small guys that pop up maybe in the summer when, the seasons are hot, you hear from the franchises that their numbers might be down year over year just because there's so many, new small fries getting into the industry and making, a couple 100,000 a year times like, thousands and thousands of those small businesses. So I've kind of seen it like the yin and yang where there's not new business for everyone. It's definitely coming off someone else's plate. And that's just, kind of creates that pretty competitive environment. So, obviously any industry you can break into and grow a business, but this one, in my opinion, is definitely getting pretty squeezed out. But yeah.
Interesting.
It's true. It's true what Jacob is saying. to an extent, but I also think there's always opportunity for anybody in any industry. You just have to find your competitive edge the same way that we did. And there are so many ways, especially with technology. I feel like it makes it easier to find your competitive edge now because there's a lot of people who are stuck in the old ways when there are new ways to really get ahead and find that competitive advantage now more than ever. But the other thing is across the nation, it the junk removal industry changes a lot because in Massachusetts, dump fees are over $200 per ton for us to get rid of things. But in Florida, for example, it is like $30 per ton or even less in some places. And those dump fees across the board really change how pricing works, how even hiring every part of the business, what kind of truck you buy. So like the economy for junk removal is different across the board, which slightly affects the way that you shape and scale the business in every state. So it is a lot harder to build systems in this industry because there are so many variables constantly changing. That's on the big picture. But even in the day-to-day operations, every job is so unique and different. There's not like an exact clear system that you follow. So like for us to be able to do our pricing, we have we have our pricing sheet, we have our metrics, and every job is so unique and individual that we have to go through like at least 20 different factors for each individual job to price them out, like the size of the items, the location, the weight. Are any items going to cost us more to get rid of at the dump? So like there might be a surcharge for Freon. So that would be air conditioners or refrigerators. Tires have to go to a different place. Propane tanks have to go to a different place. We can't take paint. Mattresses in Massachusetts have to be recycled by law. So those are just some of them, and there's so many unique individual factors for every job, which across the board in every state is also different because of the different recycling laws in every state. So that is like a little bit more of the back end of the junk removal industry to understand like what it's like from the owner's perspective. And that's why the industry exists, because to the average homeowner, most people don't want to deal with all that. They'd rather just call a company and they'll pay a premium just to get it out on the same day. And because this industry is so competitive, a lot of the service is done same to next day. Because if we don't do the job same to next day, a competitor is just going to go in there and scoop it up. And that's part of the nature of this business.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you got that dialed in. So, yeah, that's actually interesting. Now, you mentioned a little bit on your side when you're dumping, you have the fees, but when we started the story, you talked also about you got those speakers. There was some resale value. So, is there some in addition to the income from the customers who are paying to get rid of their stuff? Is there other sources of revenue like from the resale, or is that just too much? Too much hassle to deal with?
Yeah, we have a warehouse actually where we bring items back, repurpose, donate, resell, and there is an opportunity there, but our main focus is the junk removal. As long as we can repurpose items, that's our main focus. We're not trying to make money on that stuff, and most junk removal companies don't even do that. I'd say it's another part of our competitive advantage there. But yeah, in the junk removal industry, there is a big opportunity there too.
That's interesting. Yeah, Jacob, I don't know. It sounded like you want to jump in on that as well.
Yeah, no, I was kind of just going to explain a similar thing. And in terms of like the repurposing side of things, you'll find that, there's always a buyer for something, but at the same time, to connect that buyer with the product just might be not worth it. And so we remove so many different types of things, but we realize that it just makes a lot more sense to, give it away for free and try to do that in big bundles. So whether we're giving away to, different organizations or like directly to people themselves. Like we've had a few instances where maybe someone's, house burns down or they have to relocate for whatever reason, and we go and bring a truck and bring a bunch of furniture, some old like kids' toys and stuffed animals, whatever. And so that's like always really cool to do. And that costs us money directly out of pocket, but it's just a good kind of boost in the brand image and what we do, and the fact that we're not here to just throw everything away. Like we try to save things and try to repurpose things as much as we can.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And also in some ways, hopefully reduces your dump fees in some ways, which is good, good for everybody. So I think that this is really pretty cool. I think people are thinking about how they can apply it to whatever their business is. And yeah, you hit upon sort of a lot of fundamentals of business. Is that what you're going to school for at Babson? Is that in the business side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a business school. I feel I learn a lot more from the actual students there running other companies themselves opposed to the classrooms, but that's just me in terms of the structured learning. It's difficult for me to learn in a lecture. There's, lots of valuable information there, but it's more, beneficial for me to learn like directly one-on-one with other students or, the professor themselves.
Yes. That's the time-worn tale of college. I went to school for computer science and computer engineering at MIT, but you're not going to learn to program at MIT. You're going to learn that on the job. The schools will always be delayed by many years, and all they can do is condense all that learning. The one thing though that is kind of interesting, having also got an MBA, is that there are like some fundamental rules of economics, and you're starting to learn that on your own, which is fantastic. Like for example, when you were talking about differences in Massachusetts and Florida, in the one hand you have lower expenses, but you have differences in demand and you have differences also in revenue side. These things can all balance themselves out in really interesting ways. And I think, part of that's just like sort of trying to figure that out, do some modeling and things like that. And would help you be like, oh, well, maybe, even though the fees are lower, the revenue might be lower. So it all kind of comes out that way too. So this is really very fascinating. I think a lot of us are getting to that. This is basically what all large corporations do that small corporations don't do. They just have people working spending all day doing those sorts of calculations. So let's talk about the small teams, because we are all about small teams. So from your perspective, in terms of like funding or financing, have you thought about any of that? Have you thought about funding or financing to finance growth in any sort of way? It doesn't have to be venture financing. It could be traditional bank financing or other approaches, raising money. Kind of where is your head around the need to do any of that? Or is it you're going to stay focused on bootstrapping, take customer money, reinvest it, that sort of stuff for growth?
Well, yeah, like the main reason why we actually have not leveraged any debt or took on any investments until this point in our business and still haven't. But the main reason why is because we've been in college and have wanted to grow slow and steady. But now that I'm out would be the time that we do that. And it's something that we're actually looking into right now. But we realistically would leverage debt when we nail down our exact plan to scale nationwide, and because that would definitely increase the speed for us to be able to do it. And yeah, right now is the time that we're looking into that. And in a blue collar business, you don't actually need to take on investors as much as you would a tech business or other businesses, because the cash flow is so high in a blue collar business that leveraging debt a lot of the times is pretty much all you would need. But yeah, to answer that question, we have not, and right now we're creating that strategy for our business.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'm gonna keep an eye on you guys to see how things are going, and hopefully I'll start seeing junk teens everywhere. I'm in the Mid-Atlantic region, so maybe you'll end up coming down by this way before you know it. Although I spent many a year in Massachusetts, as you may have heard just now. So lived in Waltham and Cambridge. So and I miss it a lot. I really do. Still a Red Sox fan. So anyway, so I guess one last question before we get into our rapid fires here, and I guess it's really just thinking about sort of what others may be interested in doing. Some people may be really inspired by what you're talking about here, and not for the junk industry, but other these you call them blue collar industries, or industries that involve people and labor, where you can't have machines do it because the machines can't physically do it, and there's really no need for them to do it. So what, as I said, you're proof that like a small young team can really build something big, not just software. So what do you think is replicable about your model? Like, what do you think people might say, hey, I may be interested in doing this, and say the flower industry, the HVAC industry, electric contracting, any of those other industries that also involve things that people have to do the work? What would you tell a founder in a completely different industry about some of the principles that you learned, maybe teens also, that they may want to do for themselves?
Yeah, across the board, whatever industry it's in, I would say it always comes down to the people, whether it's that the people that are on your team, understanding how to communicate with them, how to communicate the vision, how to lead, execute, or it's your customers. Like, who are you building a software for? Who are you providing a service for? Understand their needs, their specific situation, and don't just create something that you think is gonna help them, but like listen to those people and what do they really need, and then just give them that, not creating what you think they need. So it's like the better you can understand people, I think the better you can create a product or service and deliver it to people. So I think the core key to success in any business is like a person's ability to understand and communicate with people.
Solid
Yeah,
advice. Go
I
ahead,
was
Jake.
definitely going to agree with that as well, and double down on that point that like you can't be afraid to ask for help. Like in our first 2 years of business, we ran zero ads. We didn't really have any money for marketing. We didn't really have a business, you know. So we made our first like $600,000 in sales, all from like word of mouth and referrals. And that's just going to show like the power of like asking, like, hey, like, do you have any friends who might need any more junk removal? Like we're out this summer, like we'd love to help out, whatever. But that same philosophy can be applied across the board. And if you understand how to communicate with people and ask for help, like people are very willing to help you out.
That's interesting. So your first 600,000 was all just friends and family and words of mouth and just spreading the word that way.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Mhm.
Now, are you mostly like doing like local advertising and like so the lawn sign approach and things like that?
Yeah, it's mostly like Facebook and Google ads, and like occasionally we'll get on the like a TV commercial or something like that. But yeah, mostly Facebook and Google is definitely like the majority.
Okay, cool. That's good to know that works. All right. So rapid fires, and we'll kind of bring things here to a close. Has been fantastic. So I always ask the three questions for everybody, whether they're the CEO of Zapier or a major company or a new small company. I always ask the same three. So the first question is tools. I always talk about technology. So what is one tool, software, automation, whatever it is that you absolutely cannot run your business without? The one that gives you and your team the 10x leverage every single week.
GoHighLevel and Jobber for us. Jobber is very niche, specific to blue collar, the trades, but GoHighLevel could really help a lot of different businesses in different industries.
That's interesting. So go high level. That's your CRM, your customer management system, your booking management, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, a lot of it is used for the phone numbers that we have on there and managing the communication and lead tracking as well.
Okay, great. Next, rapid fire is around processes. So, what is one system that you have in place or process that you think every lean leverage first team should have in place by the time they hit their first $1 million in revenue? That separates what we call the scalers, the ones who are really getting great leverage so that every dollar they make makes two or three, versus the grinders, the ones who, spend all this time making $1 million. It'll take twice as much effort to make $2 million. So, what's one thing you might tell people to stop doing that they're doing, or one thing that they should start doing today that they may not be doing?
In that early stage, I definitely think the biggest thing is your organization, and that's like mostly behind like your accounting and bookkeeping, but you could also put behind like different, contracts, agreements, or like SOPs and documents and notes and stuff like that. And so that just means having your back end and your foundation organized. But yeah, like heavy emphasis behind the bookkeeping and accounting. If you're still doing stuff on pen and paper or stuff in Google Docs, like you should really at that point have some sort of accounting software or system you can rely on.
Absolutely. Still recommend QuickBooks or?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. Great. And then I guess final lightning round question here, rapid fire, is if you can give one piece of advice to a founder who's running that dinner table size team who wants to scale. You've given a lot of advice so far here, but maybe some additional piece of advice. Someone came to you, picked up the phone and called you, just like you pick up the phone and call others. And they said, hey, Jacob, Kirk, I'm trying to do something. I need some advice. I'm in a completely different business, but I can use some tip. What's one thing that I should really think about as I want to scale?
I would say running things lean is definitely like a key because it's very easy to overcomplicate things, especially as you start scaling. And that principle of running things lean it carries all the way as you scale, and that kind of forces you to create the best systems possible. And the team grows, or the company grows with that same philosophy. And like that's even a part of that transitioning moment from a smaller to a bigger team. That's kind of how you can keep a strong product that you have control over at scale as well.
Gonna add it like a second thing is that it's always easier to pivot with momentum. And so a lot of people are trying to plan every little thing out from day one, understand what their 10-year goal is from the first month that they start the business. And that's great, but if that's planning and kind of like ideation is going to get you in the way of acting and starting to actually build the business, then you need to just kind of cut a little bit more of that out and understand that, it's time to just start doing stuff, because you can always change the idea or change the direction of the company later once you have so much stuff pushing for you now. And yeah.
There you go. Nothing beats, as they say, JFDI. Just do it. Freaking do it. So this is fantastic. Well, I think this has been a great interview. Hey, this is really great insight, because people haven't necessarily heard about how to build and scale this type of business before. And I think this is really fantastic. I'm wishing you guys a lot of success. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on you. Hopefully we'll have you back when you've crossed that $10 million mark, which hopefully won't even be that long from now. So I really want to thank both of our guests, Kirk and Jacob McKinney from Junk Teens. You guys have been fantastic. Great insights. Really appreciate your participating on this podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So I have, as always, a final mantra for the week. As you heard here, you don't need a bigger team to build a bigger business. You need a better system. And Kirk and Jacob have proved that with a single pickup truck and a crew of local teens, you can build something even bigger from there. So if you love this interview with Kirk and Jacob McKinney, I want you to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and share with that founder friend who's still thinking they need to hire their way to scale when they should be systematizing their way there. So I want you to think big, stay lean, and scale smarter. Small teams that scale big aren't the future, they're the now. If this episode has you inspired to learn more, hit that subscribe button, share it with your crew, and join the movement over at scalebrate.com. That's SCALEBRATE.com. Until next time, think big, stay lean, and scale smarter, because small teams have mega potential. And thanks for tuning in to the Small Team, Big Scale podcast.